Okay. I'm Steve Wiggins. I'm an agricultural economist and I'm a research fellow at the Overseas Development Institute here in London. And I'm talking today about the topic guide on stepping out of agriculture, which I have written together with my colleague Sharada Keats at ODI. Now, what this guide is about is we expect with development and rising incomes for agriculture to become relatively less important and for some of the current farming population to progressively work less in agriculture and more in other options. We expect them to step out of agriculture. And the two big options that we're talking about in the guide is one is where people remain in the rural areas, but they work less in agriculture and they work in rural non-farm enterprises, which might be trading, for example. It may be small artisan activities, personal services, local government, and what have you that's going on in the rural economy. The other big option that's available to farmers who are leaving farming, of course, is to migrate to the cities and to find work opportunities there. Now, those processes of moving into the rural non-farm economy or migrating to the cities, they are extraordinarily diverse and fluid. Different people have different abilities, motivations, interests, and it takes place in all manner of contexts of opportunities for agriculture, opportunities outside of agriculture, and so on. There is no simple way to explain those processes. But for policy purposes, the implications are rather clear. And here are the policy implications that we have. The first one is that we need to enable individuals, households, farms and firms to take the decisions that they want to take within their evolving contexts. And in order to facilitate and enable people's actions, government has to take care of certain fundamentals. Now, one of those is a rural investment climate that allows people to get on with business. Now, that sounds rather daunting and it sounds rather perfectionist, but you do not need a perfect rural investment climate. You merely need to get rid of the worst deterrents to people getting on with whatever they wish to do. The second thing that government needs to do is it has to invest in rural public goods. It has to put in the infrastructure, the roads, the power lines, and it has to invest in people. Education, health services, clean water that allow people to realize the capabilities that they have. Government also has to take on some perhaps slightly less straightforward and trickier things to do. Rural financial services, for example, are not well developed in most rural areas. People have real difficulties in finding savings vehicles, credit vehicles, payment vehicles, and so on. We have all kinds of experiences to promote rural financial services, but we do not have a blueprint. We do not know exactly what has to be done, and more has to be done to learn better how to stimulate more useful rural financial services for people in those rural areas. Now, having said that, once those fundamentals are taken care of, there are certain additional actions that can take place. So for the rural non-farm economy, people often talk about local economic development, LED. And that is a process by which you convene at local government level entrepreneurs, representatives of workers, civil society, local political leaders, local government officials to sit down. What are the bottlenecks we face here? What opportunities have we got? What can we do here locally? And for this, of course, you need to have decentralized administration. What can we do locally to promote business? Provided you've got the fundamentals in place, then those kinds of works at the margin can contribute to these particular processes. Now, the other side of policy for this is that in many ways, these are not necessarily equal opportunities for all. The first people to move into rural non-farm businesses, the people who get the best migration opportunities are the better educated, the people with a little bit of capital, the people with the social networks, the knowledge, the information, and so on. So initially, the process of stepping out may be unequalizing within rural society. However, most studies show that if the fundamentals are in the right place in those rural societies, poorer people will get better opportunities in the rural labour market. People leaving creates opportunities for others. Investment in rural non-farm activity creates new jobs, and the poor should be able to step up. But we need to facilitate inclusive development for poor and vulnerable people. And that has at least three elements to it. One is education and training, above all for girls, because women are usually at more of a disadvantage than men in these particular processes. So education and education for girls. In some cases, we need policies which combat discrimination on the basis of social position, ethnicity, religion, language, caste, you name it, all of those disadvantages that exist to some vulnerable groups. And we also need to support the rights of migrants as citizens against abusive treatment, against second-class treatment when they move within their countries, that they maintain their citizens' rights to decent work in the workplace, to access to public services. And there are some very exciting things that we see, say, civil society doing in India, working with Indian vulnerable migrants, particularly women, to Indian cities. Very simple things like identity cards, street lighting, toilets. But that is our agenda. Fundamentals, and then working with poor and vulnerable people to make sure we've got not just economic growth, but inclusive economic growth.